While the Trump administration is being evasive about the details of its deportations to El Salvador, claiming they could jeopardize state security privilege, there is extraordinary reporting about what is actually happening there. In an exclusive story for Time magazine, photojournalist Philip Halsinger documented the arrival in El Salvador of 261 men deported from the United States. Most of them are Venezuelans who received little or no due process by the Trump administration that designated them as gang members. Halsinger's striking photos capture their treatment at the behest of the United States government. He writes this, quote, "The men were pulled from the buses so fast the guards couldn't keep pace. Chained at their ankles and wrists, they stumbled and fell, some guards falling to the ground with them. With each fall came a kick, a slap, a shove. The guards grabbed necks and pushed bodies into the sides of the buses as they forced the detainees forward. There was no blood, but the violence had rhythm, like a theater of fear. After being shaved, the detainees were stripped naked. More of them began to whimper. The hard faces I saw on the plane had evaporated. It was like looking at men who passed through a time machine. In 2 hours, they aged 10 years. Their nice clothes were not gathered or cataloged, but simply thrust into black garbage bags to be thrown out with their hair." Joining us now, the aforementioned Philip Halsinger. Philip, thank you so much for your reporting, for bearing witness. You had exclusive access to this maximum security prison. Talk more about the treatment of this men deported from the United States. What shocked you as someone who's worked in war zones?
Yes, thank you. The story, as any story, is complex. The reality is that in El Salvador, the MS-13 gang members are truly terrifying. I've been here working on a book for a year, and I've interviewed these men in the prisons. I've read their files, and it's after many travels around the world, it's coming to this country, which is now totally safe on the streets, that I've been given my nightmares. And so I had a certain expectation when the Venezuelans were coming. I'd actually flown to New York last November and talked to officers in police intelligence about the new developments in the gangs. And I thought that these guys were going to look like MS-13, and they didn't. And part of the protocol of bringing people into the prisons is set in El Salvador, for better or for worse, because of the level of violence that these guards and police are dealing with. And yet it's still difficult to see that system.
I want to ask you about one individual you chose to write about. You write, "One young man sobbed when a guard pushed him to the floor. He said, 'I'm not a gang member, I'm gay, I'm a barber.' I believed him." Inside the intake room, a sea of trustees descended on the men with electric shavers, stripping heads of hair with haste. The guy who claimed to be a barber began to whimper, folding his hands in prayer as his hair fell. He was slapped. The man asked for his mother, then buried his face in his chained hands and cried as he was slapped again. Talk to me about what it was in his person, in his essence, that made you believe him.
It's a hard thing to talk about, as you know, in this world of reporting, and that especially when you're reporting on the suffering of others. Unfortunately, I've developed an ear for the sound of violence. I can notice the sound of a crowd. To quote myself, I say there's a difference between the sound of a whimper and a growl. And I've never seen hardened gang members cry. This does not mean that the lack of, or that tears makes you innocent. But this one person, it didn't correlate with his moment. That would be his defense, to say, "I'm a gay estilista," a gay stylist, which could be interpreted as barber. For women, it didn't correlate to the moment. Those aren't the words I would choose to ask somebody to help me, not in that environment. And so, his tone, his persistence to keep talking when he was told not to talk, just led me to question and wonder that the veracity of his claims, that there might be something there. I sure hope and believe that the El Salvadorans will find out. I hope so. That's where he is right now.
There's this one particular photo of a detainee being taken off the plane. You write that the faces of these Venezuelans plucked from America show they didn't expect to arrive to an ocean of soldiers and police assembled to apprehend them. I mean, the images are dystopian. I cannot imagine their horror and their surprise.
Yeah, I think if you're a gang member, and it's a dark world, that world. I mean, that's an understatement. If you're a gang member, yeah, what do you expect? I mean, it's an army, and they probably can stomach it, as horrible as it is. But if you're not, if you're innocent, I mean, you're already terrified. You're on a plane. You don't know where you're going, and to come off the plane and to see, something that looks like it's out of a sci-fi movie, must be unsettling. And that's, again, that human side that grabs me. And I'm not trying to pass judgment on anybody. I'm just writing what I saw and what was there. And I think if I were coming off that plane and I was innocent, I'd be trying to run back on the plane. They actually tried to overtake the plane, at least one, when they landed.
These folks have been stripped of their due process. They have been stripped of their humanity. Thank you for capturing these images and forcing all of us to bear witness. Philip Halsinger, thank you for your time. Quick break for us.
Thank you.
We're going to be right back.